A special trip to the Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. ended in disappointment for a group of Miami senior citizens who lived through the civil rights movement.
They say it's because the museum wasn't prepared to handle visitor requests. Local 10's Amy Viteri learned the museum has now temporarily stopped issuing group passes.
It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime from the moment the National Museum of African American History and Culture opened its doors in Washington last year. The planning began.
You don't know the people that paved the way for you all to be where you are now. So yeah, it really meant a lot to us to go to this museum.
Claudette Farrington graduated from Miami Northwestern Senior High School's class of 1963.
I remember still riding in the back of the bus on the way to school.
Originally an all-black school, many alumni were part of the civil rights movement.
I always tell my children about those days, and they just, to them, it's crazy, but they don't understand.
They've stayed close through the decades, planning group trips and funding scholarships for current students.
My great-grandfather lived.
Classmate Alfonso Walker now lives in Maryland. As soon as the museum opened in September, Farrington and Walker got to work. They sent out a possible itinerary to classmates for a trip in July. Passes are free, but they say the museum instructed them to request group passes online for their group of nearly 60 people. They did that in February and got an automated reply.
If you are not able to fulfill your request, we will contact you with instructions for how to select another date and time.
This email from the museum's ticket vendor says someone would reach out within 14 days to confirm or let them know if they needed to choose another date. When that didn't happen, they assumed passes would come in the mail. They chartered 2 buses, booked hotels and restaurants for the long road trip, but all those arrangements would eventually have to be canceled. Weeks later, no passes and no one to answer emails or calls.
I think the longest I held on was 4 hours one day. I got so tired of listening to music.
It was late March when Walker says he got an email confirming passes for August, not July. Then this email from the museum stating Walker had agreed to accept passes for August.
No. When you sent me that email, I had not talked to anybody.
It hurts, because we were so excited about the trip.
A museum spokesperson sent us a statement that read in part, "We are humbled by the support and interest in the museum and take every action to receive as many visitors as possible. We are sorry that we cannot accommodate everyone who wants to visit. We will continue working with Claudette Farrington and her classmates to find a time for their visit."
I went on their web page a couple of weeks ago, and now they've stopped giving group passes.
A spokesperson told us that's because they have a backlog of over 30,000 requests for group passes. Farrington says they're still hoping to plan a trip for next year's 55th class reunion, but at 71 years old, she says planning a trip like this isn't easy, and they don't want to wait much longer.
We say we don't know how long we have, and we really was excited about going on this trip, because next year we don't know who's going to be with us.
Amy Viteri, Local 10 News.
Well, tonight we heard from alumni who say that after our calls to the museum, representatives have now confirmed 60 passes for the class of 1963 reunion in June of next year. As for online requests for group passes, a spokesperson told us they are still working on a timeline for when those will be available again.